Let's have
So getting back to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
You know, I never stopped getting a chuckle out of that.
It's a classic. It's one of my favorites.
I gotta admit, I missed the joke about Wonder Woman 84.
Joke?
Yeah, where you're talking about the high art, low art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's true.
That's a good one.
I suppose
They're
we
all
could
good.
probably recut it if any of us knew what we were doing. Except I think you might, Metal. I think you might know how to do stuff.
I do. I just need to be told what to do.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Maybe we'll have to powwow some stuff. I actually have a great little clip I wanna throw in at the beginning that has nothing to do with comics, but it still cracks me up to no end. That I'll show you all when we're not live. But guys, ladies and gentlemen, out there on the internet, it's another Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy, and I am the Mattriarch. I'm the only Matt here tonight, which is not unheard of, and that's okay. I'm Matt Reese. I am coming to you from snowy and blowing and cold Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And I got to tell everybody, people get annoyed at me talking about the weather, but listen, it's my show. Anyway, yesterday, man, I was out in short sleeves. It was gorgeous. And then by about 3:00, it just started getting cool, like just a little chilly, and the wind started picking up. And then it got faster and faster, and it was snowing by 9 at night. February
be honest,
in the high plains. Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's our cyclical intermittent winters that we get around here. So
No, at least it hasn't been bipolar. Today was a very comfortable 60-ish degree rainy day. Yesterday was like 84, and like just before that we came out of freezing. So like we've been all over the place.
Yeah, that's extreme. That's extreme right there. Of course, Twitless, you live in a tropical paradise. So how's that going for you?
It's hot, and I don't like heat.
You guys want to switch?
No, I actually really like it here.
Okay.
I was just talking to one of my coworkers about that, and she says, "Why do you like it here?" And I said, I don't know. I like it. Everybody should like Nebraska, but then if everybody liked Nebraska, then I probably wouldn't.
No one would like Nebraska.
I wouldn't have some of the things I like about Nebraska, which is I can be left alone really easily here. So today we are talking about, it's just a webcomic hangout. It's a Q&A for any of you guys tuning in out there in internet land if you have questions about webcomics or whatever. But we're just gonna talk about it pretty low key. All of us make webcomics. So there's that. That's a fun thing that happens. Twitless, how long have you been in the webcomic game? I know we reviewed each other's webcomics a couple weeks ago, but what's the dates on that for you?
Oh goodness, I'm terrible with dates. Give me a second, because I can't. It's actually on. Fortunately, it's not too hard to look up, because we slap dates on the the website. 2000
May 17th, 2016.
2016. Well, okay, technically yes. I think that's when we got the website maybe kicked off, but I believe it was 2010 actually when we actually did the actual first strips.
True, but we never actually put it up, so it can't be called webcomic.
Yeah, it can't be a webcomic till it's on the web.
But we can count our Sonic fan comic,
I was
which
gonna
was
say,
published
can't count
on DeviantArt in
DeviantArt counts. DeviantArt counts.
That is on the web.
When
It's
was
not got all the street cred of like being on Comics Genesis back in the day, like some people. But I'm before the key. I'm after the Keen Space days, so I don't even have that much cred.
when did that go up?
I've got it here.
2010. Looks like around 2010. But although that comic was actually done prior to 2010. So.
True, and the fact is, as a college project, in a web design class, I actually put this up on an official website even earlier than that.
So it's been a while, at least for us.
And you can tell by the art.
There's a small part of me that wants to at least do the first three story arcs of that, finish that Sonic story arc. But say la vie.
There's a funny thing about that. So when I started in Forces was 2005. Or actually 2006 is when he first got it up on the internet. But the year before that, Chris, my co-creator, he had a Penny Arcade clone that he did, and it's actually still out there on the internet. You can go if you go to. We incorporated the continuity of his comic into Forces back in 2012. I think we did that story, maybe 14. So if you go to idealcomics.net and go to read comics, in the drop down is the Adventures of Seth and Murphy, Chris was really happy to forget about that, but I loved it. I think there's a lot of funny charm, even as an admitted format clone of two guys on the couch playing video games. Very, very Penny Arcade inspired thing, but
most common webcomic in existence.
Yes.
Well, it was. I think that was maybe 10 years ago. I don't know if that's still. It was. No, it was for like the early 2000s, early mid 2000s. There, I think it's. I think it has been eclipsed, but it definitely.
By what?
I mean, like just everything that's on Webtoon, essentially.
Yeah,
Webtoon
is a stupid.
Oh, you're right. All those anime romances.
Yeah. But like there was a period where Cartoonicus was 100% correct, and the most common, you had Control Alt Delete, Penny Arcade, PvP, a host of others. It was the most common thing, and it started to come its own, started to create its own resonant tropes, where you would just see, and it was kind of like watching a sitcom where you would just go, oh, it was comfortable. It was like, here's the loser gamer guy who knows a bunch about video games. Here's his crazy cartoon sidekick that doesn't make any sense in his real life, whether it's a giant cartoon animal character or a robot or whatever. Here's the sarcastic semi on and off again girlfriend. Here's all the dude bro humor.
Well, and there's still plenty of legends out there. VG Cats, Nerf Now. But
we got Nicholas in chat.
Hey, how's it going, man? How's it going?
Hey, well read.
But anyway, like I was saying, that was hello, well read. We actually did have like I was saying, so Chris has been doing webcomics since 2005, and it's actually really fun because every once and again somebody will talk about that nobody ever complained about the prequels, the Star Wars prequels back in the day when they first coming out, and Chris actually has a comic about hating on the prequels from the era when they were coming out. So I will link to this old comic and been like, nah.
All right, so we have our first question. Nicholas says, part of this is to ask questions about webcomics, and even if we're not the best at it, although I think Cartoonicus and I we're the best webcomic that no one knows about, or that no one cares about, even if they know about it. But Nicholas says, I'm fighting a cold, but I'm curious what got you into webcomics, and I think that's a very important story to tell.
Well, let's start with the metal, because he hasn't had a chance to say anything yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, well, I wanted to say when I started doing comics, webcomics first, because believe it or not, I tried way back and then gave up really early and scrubbed it from the internet.
I felt like you were about to say you tried way back before the internet existed.
No, I wasn't even alive before the internet existed.
The metal brings up a very important point, because I don't know if it applies to Forces of Good and Evil, but it's definitely a very similar story to what happened to us. I think the false start is a very common part of the comic creation and the webcomic creation story. the false start where you start out, you do it, and then go, oh, and it falls apart and doesn't work out. I think it's very similar to a lot of entrepreneurs who they start their first business and go bankrupt, you know?
Yeah.
So I because that happened to us, whether it was the Sonic webcomic we started and stopped and didn't go anywhere with, or our first attempt at Super Schooled, which got into the first, I think, 7 or 8 strips, and then we just kind of stopped and then just gave up for several years. Very common. So I think if you start a webcomic and fail, you're actually on track for success.
It'd be weird if you didn't actually, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I remember mine actually, funny enough, because I said I hate stories about school. My original comic took place in a school very similar to some of the stuff you guys, but not superheroes. It was more like a fantasy RPG type stuff. And it wasn't a high school, it was college. And I did like 4 pages of that when I just started getting into digital art. And then I scrapped it. Like, I think it may have sat up on my DeviantArt for maybe 4 years. I think I put it up in like 2009. And then I'm just like, I don't even want this on my record anymore. So I scrubbed it. Maybe you could find it with some Wayback Machine or whatever, but I doubt anybody even bothered to archive it. And then probably the oldest comic on the web I still have up is a one-shot, like a single 6-panel strip when I participated in a fan comic competition for Brennelfloss, the comic. And that one's still up, and that was back in 2012. But then I just kind of decided I was going to work more on novelization for the next few years. In 2014, that's when I started writing Ex Dynamis Chaos in more of like a pulpy form, putting it up chapter by chapter. And then in 2018, after failing to get a Kickstarter going for the Outstanding Jackrabbit, I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to start remaking Ex Dynamis Chaos as a webcomic. And I've been doing that since, on and off, fairly inconsistently. I was very consistent for the first year. I was doing like 2 comics a week.
Well, and consistency in webcomics is like hard, right? Because because it's a grind. Like, I've had I should have asked him if he wanted to come on for this conversation. My friend Matt Johnson, who did Cortland and Out at 5 for a long time, he was part of a competition called the Daily Grind for a while, and basically it was 5 comics every day until whoever dropped out was supposed to get, like, everybody put in like $5, and so like the winner take was something like $1,000 for. There's so many webcomicers that were in on it. And I think Matt said one time, he said he made it like 4.5, 5 years, and then just like burnt out, and that was it. And I mean, he kept doing comics, but they weren't the 5 a day anymore. He's just like that. I don't know. I'm never getting this money. So, but yeah, I mean, it even if you're just doing like we are with Forces right now, where we got 1 page a week, it's a grind. You gotta set up time. You gotta do it, you know. And that is it's a challenge. I think some people aren't ready for it, because I think a lot of people think making comics is easy. And I don't think that that's true.
Those people are silly heads.
I think my big problem was that I was still in high school, and being a high schooler, the comic wasn't even drawn that well, but comparatively, it was a pretty easy comic to make. There was just so many other things I also would rather be doing as a high schooler than sitting at home and spending all day working on a single page of a comic.
Yeah. It definitely. I mean, it's it's a commitment that you either choose to do or not. But yeah. So you got into comics from that. But why did you choose webcomics? What made that interesting for you?
Because I had already been reading webcomics for years. I think probably the first one that I ever read was still my favorite, for the dumbest reasons, but I love it, which was 8-Bit Theater. And I only even found it because I watched on Newgrounds, some people had done collabs where they took like the first, like, I guess, section arc, whatever. It's like the first 25 pages, and they stretched out 5 pages per little animated short. And I'm like, oh, I really like this thing. I wish there was more. And then I found out, like, oh, it's a webcomic. And then I went and read through like the entire webcomic, and I kept up with it until it ended. and that got me into reading other webcomics. And I really like the format and medium because I can still do the same type of things trying to make a comic book like I tried back in like school and stuff way back, but I can also do things centered around individual pages, like setting up a joke per page, or every page can be like a cliffhanger or page turn instead of every other page and stuff. Like there was just some fun things you could do with webcomics. I'm like, I want to get into this.
Definitely. So, Taylor, how about yourself? What got you into webcomics?
Twitless.
Huh, that's funny. You and me have a very similar story on that. So, Twitless, why did you subject Taylor to this
Would I
torture?
bully him into it? Okay. Oh, geez. I don't remember why we started the Sonic fan comic. I just love. Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, it was really the same mindset as the other one. It's like, hey, we should do this.
Yeah.
But at the time, we were fairly new to each other.
Yeah.
And, I was learning that you were a big Sonic fan. And I had started drawing anthropomorphic animals for the first time recently. And so just various conversations often led to the Sonic games. And at a certain point, we were just like, we should do something with this.
Yeah. For the webcomic, yeah. So it started off with that, and just us. It also started with just our love of talking about pop culture, animation, and superhero storytelling. Because Kartukas and I ended up working at the same location. We both did security at a church. Yes. Which was fun, and it led to some interesting moments. I used to pop around behind corners and hunt Taylor through the dark church.
Gosh.
Fun times.
That from my memory.
Fun times. But while we were also doing that, we would just talk for hours about our favorite characters. We would debate about concepts and powers and our different opinions on approaching.
Don't forget that we were also playing City of Heroes at that time. So there was a lot of just a lot of and I have seen this in other stories about collaborators, and they start off just sharing just fun conversations about their favorite stuff. And out of that grows, what? We should do our own thing. And that's essentially part one of how we got started. But that was what led us to our false start. What led us to our real start was me going to a Comic-Con and getting very, very insanely jealous of all the people who were living the dream of just making comics. And I finally got fed up with being jealous. And I said, come hell or high water, I will put the money down for a website. We're doing this. And it was that level of just, it's going to happen. I don't care what I have to do to make it happen, that made it happen, which I know feeds into Reese, your story, essentially, because I think that's a very similar energy, which was I don't care what happens. If I have to pick up the pencil myself, like you do the Thanos moment, you pull up the Infinity Gauntlet. Fine, I'll do it myself. And,
Sort of. With Chris and I, we met working at Walmart and just had a ton of stuff in common. We've talked about that, but we spent. We came up with Forces in 2003, and we pitched it to Mad Magazine. We thought it would be a really good a good venue for it. We thought it would fit really well, and they didn't want it. We didn't know what to do with it, and so we just kept trying to pitch to DC, pitch to Marvel, sending out query letters, trying to get the attention of an editor, and just collecting rejection letters, and what we ended up doing is one day, Chris says, we should just make comics. Let's just do it. And I said, that's insane. Which in my mind was a callback to an article from Wizard Magazine in like 95, where they interviewed Brian Pulido. So that was something.
Oh man, That's some lore right there. It's
Yeah.
funny
Well,
considering
well,
what he ends up doing late nowadays. Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy because it's called "Self-Publishing is Insane" was the name of the headline in the article, and I'd read about it, and it was like it stuck in my head, and me and another friend of mine and I had been talking about doing our own publishing in like in like a pulp style magazine. We were trying to like see about starting something, and that never really got off the ground or whatever. But that was still in my head somewhere, and I knew Chris was, so Chris says this to me, and I was like, "This is crazy. That's never going to work." And so then Chris actually lays out a plan for how we could possibly make it work. And he said basically, we'll never fail if we never stop. Because
That's fair. That's fair.
And I'd never heard of, and I didn't really know about webcomics. I mean, I knew they existed, but I wasn't really into them at all. And so then Chris was like, "No," and I knew he was doing one, but I didn't really know anything about it. He said, "No. Really, we should do it. We should do it. And we can, you kind of draw and I kind of draw, and maybe together we can really draw." And I said, "I don't know about that."
That math doesn't check out.
Yeah.
Two half artists does not a whole artist make, my friend.
Yep. The calculus there is
Only if he was like, "Well, you can kind of draw people, and I could kind of draw backgrounds and backgrounds." I could see that working out, but just like in general, kind of draw. It's like, well, do any of you excel in any given thing?
I don't. The only thing I excel at is I'm really good at talking. That's the only thing.
I excel at mediocrity.
And I can use a hammer with both hands. So there you go.
We got some more
Same.
engagement from chat. So Mrs. H is making some church jokes.
Yeah.
No, I never stole anything from the church. I just scared Taylor into almost the afterlife.
And I've never heard of an NIV only church.
I believe they exist, though. Like, if you told me that, I would believe it.
There might hold on. No.
I mean,
that's
anything's
an odd one. Yeah, it's an odd one. And
I've heard New King James only. Like that I've heard.
Definitely King James only. Yeah.
I actually went to a King James only church for a little while in Arkansas, and they shamed me for wearing shorts one Sunday.
Oops.
So that was
Red asks us, are we going to MegaCon in Orlando? So I don't know if Reese is going to be able to make it. He'll probably be snowed in March.
It's unlikely I'd get snowed in March. Our really bad spring blizzards usually wait till the end of April.
Based on what Twitless was just talking about, I hope you might come back and say, Cartoonicus, we're going to make a movie together. That's it. We're just doing it.
We're just doing it. Well, you've come close to that. Neostar's in chat. Good to see you, brother.
Yep.
So I think we've acknowledged everybody there. Oh, nope, Jim Tuner.
Yeah,
Jim Tuner says, he's calling us out for being Sonichu fans. That's where it started. I think my love of Sonichu happened after we did our own fan comic, because the first lolcow I knew of was David Gonterman, who was also a Sonic fan, but he was like the proto Chris Chan. I think he might predate Chris Chan. He definitely is way less of a train wreck. But that's we started finding out about him.
He was pretty infamous back then, though.
He was, but like it reached nowhere near the Sistine Chapel that Chris Chan would paint. David Gonterman looks quaint in comparison.
No.
I don't know if you've kept up with your Chris Chan lore.
No, I don't know who it is actually.
I have.
Yeah, I was gonna say the metal. This could get very dark really fast.
Yeah,
considering where that ended up.
We cannot talk about.
Just stop right there.
Does this have anything to do with the name 4chan?
No.
I am going to take the opportunity to share this page here for a second, so that you guys can
Where'd it go? There it is.
note.
I think we both tried to add it to the stream at the
Yeah,
same
I think
time.
so.
Oops.
A very specific spelling of a character's name.
Yeah.
Dennis Gunter.
That was our reference to David Gonterman.
That was your reference to David Gonterman.
He became. Oh no, you can't put this out on me. He became your favorite character.
Yes, but I did not name him.
Okay. Jim Tuner says we're all going to Hollywood to make movies with Twillis. Bollywood is where it's at, actually.
Here's the best thing. It's Sonichu that matters, not Chris Chan.
That's fair.
I can relate to that that drive or impulse though. Like I'm always just like, hey, we're gonna do something. I wrote a radio play that I still want to record, and recently I've been bullying some people like, hey, we should just record a pilot of a sitcom. I'll do all the editing. We can make it cheap. We can make it 4:3 old school. Let's just do it.
So here's the funny thing. I used to feel bad about bullying, and then I realized that's how Harvey Picard actually got anything done in comics. And he completely admits to it. He's just like, and then I just spend, an hour on the phone bullying half a dozen artists to draw pages for my next comic. And I'm just like, well, at least I'm not doing that.
Well, and the beauty of it is it's sort of like, it's like, well, okay, anybody can take a look at Picard and they're just like, yeah, but I forget his name now. Oh my God.
Robert Crumb.
You hate him.
Art Crumb.
Art Crumb. Art Crumb's like, it was like Art Crumb believed in me. I don't know what your problem is.
We all know, looking through history, bullying is actually what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
So this is a one of Chris's comics. And this is actually the Star Wars one. So that was came before Forces of Good and Evil. So that's what that was. But
all right.
So anyway, but yeah, so I wasn't really into webcomics at all until Chris is like, you should check this out. We should do this. And so then I started looking at other people's webcomics and trying to get onto the forums and trying to just, get to know people. And that's how I got into webcomics as a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I
think
always,
I think it started for me. I think I was reading, I was a wiki whore. And so I would just read Wikipedia articles, and then I discovered TV tropes. And I think it was TV tropes that led me to webcomics. I think it was TV tropes
I've
that
discovered
led me
a lot through TV tropes.
Yeah. I think it was TV tropes that led me to 8-bit theater and a few others.
So I think I went in the opposite direction. 8-bit theater led me to TV tropes, and that's how I discovered a lot of different other webcomics.
No, I think it was TV tropes that led me to 8-bit theater and Order of the Stick, which is a very well known. I think Order of the Stick used to have. I don't think it has it anymore, but it used to hold one of the crowdfund records for like most successfully funded comic oriented Kickstarter or something.
Hold on, let's not forget Nodwick and
PS238
droids.
I was gonna say PS238, Darth. Yeah, no, those were all good, and so you just you would discover them on like random humor websites, sometimes too, like Something Awful, stuff like that. Old internet newgrounds, obviously old internet and stuff. Yeah.
Sometimes you're reading a comic and then somebody will have an ad for their comic on the sidebar of the site for the comic you're reading, and you'll click on it.
Okay, I have to say something that I'm not exactly ashamed of, but I'm a little sheepish about. I discovered a chunk of the internet culture and therefore webcomics from Encyclopedia Dramatica. Because
that was standard back then.
Yeah, because like they were mercilessly would make fun of this stuff, and so I would discover what was his name? Was it John Solomon? Your webcomic is bad and you should feel bad.
I think so.
And it just that was just a website of just taking the piss
There's still the Bad Webcomics wiki, which is around.
I go to that one regularly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I discover new ones from there, but most of them are just furry degeneracy at this point.
Yeah, most of them actually belong on a site that's called the Bad Webcomics wiki. Like,
Yeah, it's John Solomon. That's correct.
John Solomon was brilliant, and I discovered a few comics just through his work. And so I would discover webcomics through people being mercilessly mean about webcomics, and then I would get interested from that.
Well, and here's the most frustrating thing for me about that is I'd read some of those. I wasn't aware of them until after I'd already involved. But I've never had enough reading to have anybody tell me my webcomic was actually bad. So I've had people that have been like, your art's kind of not great. Okay. But I've never had anybody enough quantity of people to actually say this is sort of trash.
I remember one person getting on us for the strip where the twist at the end is that the villains are also celebrating Earth Day and thinking it was the stupidest thing in the world.
The closest I got is I had a cousin that was reading Forces for quite a while, and he really liked it and would email me about it and stuff back in the day. But we have one story that basically involves the coming of a disco cult. It's the rebirth of the disco cult from the 70s, and there's all these and there's an actual infection that people can get called the disco fever, and Tattoo is infected with the disco fever, and finds his mind being manipulated by the disco, and they go to a punk rock doctor to try to get a cure or whatever, and it's all these music genre jokes, and my cousin says, I'm not really digging your storyline, and I'm like, okay, what don't you like about it? He says, well, here's the thing. I don't care about music. I was like, it's not really about music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
it's just like a plot mechanic.
It's a plot mechanic. He's like, yeah, but that doesn't interest me at all.
There are just some people that are like that. Like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, and he's my cousin, so I'm not going to stop liking him anyway or whatever. And it wasn't really hurtful. He was just like, okay.
See, my problem is more of just engagement, right? Like, views have been decent. The only people who've ever actually said anything bad about the art are usually like professional comic artists that I know, and they're just like ribbing. But like I intentionally draw the art really stupid and next item is chaos as per the story. And most people that read it say that they find the story hilarious. It's just I have to actually like pin them down and ask them. There's like nobody ever comments or anything like that. It's like, I would really like somebody to say something at all about anything.
Yeah. We've occasionally had people leave comments on Forces about particular jokes that they like or whatever, or plot bits. And I've had several people that have read through chunks of the archives or whatever. But it's also our back room. I don't know. We've got tons of robots on everything. It's awful.
Oh yeah, no, like most of the comments on the site every day just get picked up by the spam filter, and I'm just like, okay, delete.
Yeah, I've had issues with it having so many that I can't even go through them all. So I'll sit there for like an hour and a half, several times a year, and just like delete comment pages and pages and pages of comments.
Oh, I got a bulk delete button.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I should be happy not to have to deal with that or envious of having enough comments to have to delete.
We have to delete a couple here and there. Some of them were really odd. Fizz says hi.
And to remind the newcomers, this is not just a webcomic hangout. It's a webcomic AMA. So feel free to ask anything about our experience with webcomics, how we choose to do webcomics, what we like about webcomics. And actually, let's go through that. Let's have a little topic here, Alright, is what are some of the favorite comics that you guys have read that you didn't do?
You mean webcomics specifically?
Webcomics. Yeah, webcomics.
Order of the Stick, definitely near the top. I think 8-Bit Theater is one Metal and I share.
8-Bit Theater is at my top, yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually say, like, it's my favorite, even though I didn't do it. Like, I would put it above any of the comics I've done.
8-Bit Theater is solid. I'm still not the happiest at how it ended, but I understand.
I love how it ended.
I understand how it ended, and I think the strip may have dragged on a bit, if I'm being honest. But
dude, the fact you guys conflict so hard about that actually is the only thing that's made me ever want to read 8-Bit Theater. I now feel
it's a 1,214 page joke.
Yeah. Oh god, that's
how it bookends is pretty epic. I will admit that.
The epilogue's really good too. And it's like just one long strip. It's like
the epilogue was actually, I think, the part I didn't like. I was just like, okay, whatever. I feel like if it had ended like the strip before the epilogue, it probably
the actual ending strip.
Yeah, that might have been actually better.
I should also point out that around this time, Photoshop really started becoming a more mainstream thing, and that opened up the gate for over 9,000 Sonic sprite comics to become a thing.
I think Mrs. H is talking about a Mega Man one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I.
Well, interestingly, you should say that, because there was this comic, Sonic and Pals, which actually started out as Mega Man, and then they realized the similarity between the red, blue, and pink of Sonic, Knuckles, and Amy, and they said, "All right, poof, now you're Sonic characters."
Why not?
Right?
So they just became Sonic characters?
Yeah, the part of the whole deal with the entire comic was that the author was a character, and he was basically the god of that universe, so he could snap his fingers and do anything.
Oh yeah, that's an old conceit in webcomics. The appearance of the artist. In fact, in Elf Only In, which is one of my favorites, Josh Sortelli did several jokes with the appearance of the artist, where he had a spritified version of himself that would descend from the rafters on a string, like not in a Greek play.
Well, that's what happened. You would have basically the word bubble come from the sky here. I'm trying to find one. Oh yeah, that's right. For some reason he took on the form of Shadow. Whoops.
That's hilarious.
But he went on for this for several years and got pretty good with the quality of it, even creating animations at times for special things like holidays. I can't speak.
I feel like, okay, Mrs. H keeps describing this Mega Man comic. I feel like I read this at some point. I don't remember it either. I think I'd memory hold it too, but
there's another famous one that it's not entirely Mega Man, but it was a big three-way fight between the Mega Man characters, the Mario characters, and the Sonic characters. I'm trying to remember if I can remember what the name was. That went on for like 4 years. A couple hundred strips.
So I am probably, just because of my age and because of when I got into webcomics, and the other thing is that at one point, I got so busy just making comics and with my life that I did not read up on a lot of stuff. But a lot of the comics that I think that I dig, you guys may not have weren't in the space in the same way. But do any of you guys know Zebra Girl?
No.
No.
Zebra Girl was an all black and white strip about a girl who becomes possessed by a demon, and actually becomes a demon.
That sounds fun.
And it actually is really good. And then there's a whole thing with like interdimensional travel and all kinds of stuff. And Joe England was the artist for it. And I read probably the first half of it, and he actually did end up finishing it. I looked last year at it, and I can't remember how long it is. I think it's something like 7 or 8 trade paperbacks all put together, because he's got it printed too. And I've considered like maybe, going through and buying it as I go. But that one was one of my favorites. Another one that I really, really dug on, that just went away entirely, was a comic called The Green Avenger, which was basically, it was kind of one of those really common self-insert comics where the artist was kind of the main character, but a fictionalized, idealized version of the main character. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of slice of life meets superheroes, but like girl drama stuff. But I thought that the gal who did Abby, she had a really genuineness that made it really engaging. But she just went through some stuff and then scrubbed it completely off the internet.
Yeah, that's the thing about webcomics, and there's a Mr. Yanafui, good to see you, brother. Mr. Yanafui does the most hilarious web or music video mashups. They're really and I say this because I was finally featured in one, so that's why they're a genius, obviously.
Of course, why not?
No. The thing about webcomics, and this is something that, as Mrs. H is describing one, is interesting to bring up, is how quickly they can disappear. Mm-hmm. And there's a follow-up stream that we're going to do at some point where we talk about social media comics specifically, especially my favorite edgy ones. And maybe not just my favorite edgy ones, but there's a lot of really edgy ones, and they keep getting banned. And so they'll mostly post on Twitter, then they'll get the account nuked, and then like you lose like a whole corpus of work. And you have to like track them down like, rare Pokemon cards. But,
or like, I've actually, I went through a phase where I was like just seeking out old webcomics. Mm-hmm. And especially because like when my pal Matt was doing Cortland, which is like a Dilbert meets Tron sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, which if Tim Lim is out there listening, then he's just cringing hearing me describe it that way, just because he hates anyone describing anything that way. It's peanut butter meets jelly. It's a great sandwich. Anyway, with it, he was really tight in the Comics Genesis webcomic community back in the day. So he had tons of references to other people's comics and cameos and crossovers and all kinds of stuff. So it got me curious to like track through all sorts of other people's books. And so I was going through and looking for other people's books, but a ton of people just have nuked their stuff, right? Or it's gone out of the way or whatever. Yep. And so I really went through just, going through the archive.org, the Wayback Machine, and just trying to track down obscure strips that just don't even exist anymore. Yeah, I can't count to you the number of hours that I have spent logging away that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, you're right. It's interesting, and it's something that Jim Tuner says webcomics are a disposable culture. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I half agree.
Mm-hmm. I don't even know. Some of them are disposable. I think there's some that aren't disposable culture, though.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I half agree. And
are you comparing them to Zines?
Oh gosh, here we go again.
No, I think that's actually a valid.
Kick him off the stream.
I think that's actually a valid comparison in a lot of ways, because in a lot of webcomics, they're not necessarily at their best, like artists or even people, right? Like there was one comic, and I can't remember the dude who did it. It was called Bad Guy High, and it was about a supervillain high school. Mm-hmm. And the one heroic guy in it, and he had it started as like a gag a day thing, and it ended up being this very involved hyper drama. But like the dude who drew it had some serious personal problems, and he talked about it in the blurbs below his comics a lot. He's like, I know I haven't posted in a month, but I've been going through this and it he just was like just pouring himself out over it. And in
Right.
some ways, I just like, well, I get that you have these cool personal problems, but you're kind of like taken away from the art. So you have the art, which is one thing, and then your catharsis, which is something different, because they're not the same. Because you're not really dealing with those same kind of issues in your book. You've got separate sets of things.
And you could be using that to drive.
Well, you know,
the
I mean,
book.
when you deal with for some people, when you're dealing with depression or dealing with that kind of stuff, just having something to do, some motivation to keep doing something is worthwhile, and I appreciate that from that perspective. But at the same time, it was such a frequent thing that in reading through the archives, it was sort of like, you know, here I wanted to pay attention to your story, but you keep pulling me out of the story with how your girlfriend like dumped you. And like, I don't care, you know, that was 7 to 12 years ago. You know, but that's stuck on the internet. But at the same time, I mean, like, you know, he did produce, even if it was sporadically, he did produce a work that, you know, I spent, I don't know, 2 months reading through and really enjoyed it. He had a surprise ending that he actually had I had to go back and check it, but he actually had it's not really a surprise. He telegraphed it way back in the early strips, and you know, it's something that you totally miss. So it was really funny in terms of that. But yeah, it was one of those things but so on the one hand, you see people that you know, when they're young or they're idealistic or they're not quite refined, they may want to move past what it was and kind of forget about it. But at the same time, it's I think it can stand on their own. Another one of the comics I really liked, and you can still read it out there, is the Repository of Dangerous Things. And Amanda Hardy, the gal who did that, she did it over 2002 and 2003. And it was done traditionally and colored with I think alcohol markers and then scanned in, right? And I thought it was, and I think it's funny. I think it's witty. I think it's smart. I had read it back in like 05, 06, something like that. Well, it was video 06 or 07. And then I went back to it to read through it again because I got a hankering back in 2018. I just poured through it, and it was amazing. I just think it's hilarious, and it's about there's a warehouse in Boston where the government hides away all the dangerous things like ghosts and mummies and monsters and all kinds of stuff that, you know, you run into. And there's a guy who's looking for a job for college, and he goes and gets a job working at the repository, and he doesn't have any clue what he's getting into, and doesn't belong there, and he's kind of stupid. And so the girl who runs it basically like browbeats him into working for her, and so it's just this crazy ridiculous setup. And she had been on Twitter and then killed her Twitter and then started it back up again suddenly. And so I reached out to her and I was like, I got to tell you, I really like this comic. And she's like, I can't stand that comic.
I mean, that's like me talking about our Sonic comic.
She's like, I'm glad you're enjoying it, but I can't can't stand it. And I'm just like, man, I mean, yeah, okay. Yeah, the art looks like a 20-year-old college student drew it, but man, that's funny stuff. It's genuinely hilarious. So,
and here's the thing. Talking about Sonic comics. Have you ever heard of a webcomic actually called Sonic the Comic?
No.
I'm trying to find some actual good pictures of it here. I can only find recent stuff. There was a comic, I don't even know how far back it was, but it basically took the both the Archie universes and
Wait, are you talking about like the UK one? That's like
no, it took the Archie universe and the British Fleetway universe and mashed them together into a fan comic.
Oh, okay.
And this is the I'm not gonna be able to find good pictures of it. Basically, that
Better or
fan
worse
comic,
than Sonic for Hire?
I'm not sure. I haven't really gotten to check it out, but I know it was extremely popular.
Sonic for Hire is not a comic.
There was a comic version of it for a little bit.
Oh, was there? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was like a sprite comic.
it got so popular, it actually caused some competition for the Archie comics. And as such, a little guy you might have heard of known as Ian Flynn got hired by the Archie comics and has since then, basically been the Sonic guy on all comics in the universe. Right? So sometimes these fan comics can actually generate celebrities and very successful careers.
It can, yeah, certainly. There's definitely some very successful web comics.
What's more is that all the while he was now a big thing on DeviantArt, this person named Evan Stanley started doing webcomic, and she just got hired by IDW to replace him. So this appears to be a thing. If you can make a popular comic, they're going to take notice.
Well, I've got that licked.
Yeah.
I'm free
Well,
being not noticed.
I think we already knew this though, with how many Tumblr comic artists were hired into Marvel.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't even have to be that good or that popular.
Well, that's
You
more of a
simply
political thing.
You
but-
can simply just be on the right social media website.
Right.
I was gonna say Jim Tudor says being hired by IDW is not a high bar. That is correct.
Well, they
But,
won't
but to
hire
the
me.
last topic, I'm actually almost deathly afraid of comics disappearing overnight, which is one of the reasons why my stuff is just mirrored everywhere. Like I have my main site. I would prefer if people read it on the main site, even though I know navigation's not the best. But like I always look at my life and it's like there's really good reasons that site might just disappear one day.
Yeah.
And then if I only mirror it one place, that might disappear one day. But if I mirror it all the places, then it might never go away.
That's a fair
and that's
point.
actually something
And you'll be
we've had
stuck with it forever.
That's something we've had with Forces. Is that when we were first on global Comic Central, not Comic Central, Comics Genesis back in 06, and in the summer of 07, they had server problems and we couldn't update. We couldn't connect to the FTP server because that's how long ago that was. We couldn't connect to the FTP server that whole summer, and so we couldn't update on that summer. And so we actually when we were able to again, we actually made a joke about that. But we decided to put out for web space and moved our whole comic over to our own web server, and we had a service where we could pay on the monthly. And it was something we could both afford, right? Because neither Chris or I were rolling in cash, but we could afford it on the monthly. And we had that for several years. And then they came in and changed everyone's contract to annual. And we didn't have that kind of cash. And so they locked us out of the whole website. And we didn't have access to the files. It was a whole mess. We had to go back, and I had some and Chris had some, and we had to put them together. And there were a few that for some reason didn't get saved on whatever computer or whatever. And so we spent 6 months rebuilding the archives and finding a new web host and having to re-upload, 2 years worth of comics. And it was exhausting. And it was horrible. That was horrible. So
I also want to reply to Jim Turner's comment. We're not just talking about any IDW comic. We're talking about the official Sonic comic they're doing now, and having to step into the shoes of Ian Flynn as he retires. And if there's any question about that, I'm going to post some of her work here.
So
was that a threat or? Okay.
I don't know. Who you
No. We're talking about someone who writes and draws and colors, like
Oh.
everything in this comic.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So earlier in the chat, Mrs. H says Bob and George. I don't know what that is.
That is the Mega Man comic that she was talking about. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was not familiar with that one. I was familiar with similar types of those. I think I might have looked at one a couple times. I don't think I ever got too much into those. I did watch most of the Sonic for Hires though. It started to dip. I'm going to be honest. After a bit.
So Jim specifically says no criticism of her. There's a criticism of IDW.
Yeah, I get that. I just wanted to point out that in this case, it's a very high bar because you're stepping into the shoes.
They did get the license from Sony, so you know.
You mean Sega
or Sega? Yeah. Sega.
Oh, okay.
I'm just talking about the fact that she's basically stepping into the shoes of Stan Lee here.
Okay, that's too. I don't know if that would. Go that
No.
Archie's version of Stan Lee.
So, Abby don't know what the stream is. It is a webcomic hangout. We're just talking about webcomics.
Yeah, we need to
experience with them. Our insights.
I actually like Jim Tuner's idea.
Reese, pin a comment that says AMA. Ask us anything so that we. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, let me.
I'm advertising this all over social media.
I have too. I was actually advertising this yesterday because I was in the Newgrounds Festival server, and there were like 5 or 6 people asking me about advice on webcomics, specifically like where the host, when to start and stuff. I'm like, I'll answer your questions, but I'm also doing a hangout tomorrow. You guys can come by and ask questions there. I can answer it with my voice instead of spending all this time typing thousands of words at you.
Okay.
I will say that, like, in terms of like hosting and such, I think that Cartoonicus and I, and this was a few years ago, I think before Webtoons really became like the Goliath that it became, and was back still in the day when you could, or I think it was still accepted to like, oh, you're making a webcomic, make your own website, and the landscape for webcomics, I think, is changing. And it's not that you can't have any webcomics on their own website, but I do think that is a bit of an artifact of an older internet. And what we're seeing, and I'm not even saying I like this, but again, it's just the trends, right? Is that the internet, the old internet is, giving way to these new trends, and those new trends include big platforms being where you go. We're on Tapas. I thought we were on Webtoon. Shows what I know.
Oh, you guys are on Tapas? I should go subscribe. I have all my stuff on Tapas too.
I didn't know you guys were on. I don't think I knew you guys were on Webtoon. I'm not subscribed.
I
should change that.
Which one did we get? Did we get on Webtoon or was it just Tapas?
I'd like to get on Webtoon, although it does have considerably more in the way of the same old anime comic 12,000 times.
Right.
I like Tapas because you can put web novels on it as well, when a lot of my writing stuff is on there.
But Cartoonicus is the one who runs that. I have not been paying as much attention. But Abigail says post links in chat, which is a good idea. Cartoonicus, if you got links, we'll post them.
Zay says Tapas has issues uploading. Well, I wouldn't know. Although Carl Pencilman has comics on Tapas. Or are they not up there?
I think they might be, but he has not updated anything. So maybe some are there. I had trouble finding it, but it could have just also been Tapas' search. Cranks out sometimes.
I haven't seen him around lately. So
I will once in a blue moon see him upload like a pinup or something to Newgrounds. But I haven't seen him make a comic page in quite some time because he kind of like retired Holgrave, and I don't know if Holgrave is still on there, to make Barrel Shell, which is like the same universe but like the better story he wanted to tell, and then he kind of just stopped making Barrel Shell, so I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, and like Barrel Shell was like a generation later, right? That was the setup on that.
Well, I think something because you could see characters from the other one in the background. So I think they're technically happening at the same time, but a generation later because time doesn't matter in his world.
Right.
Yeah.
So Abigail's got an excellent question, which is better for gaining fans, sites specifically for webcomics, or all-purpose social media like Twitter? My answer to that question is I think it depends. I think it depends on the comic you have, your social media following. I think there's a couple of different factors, and I think that there are some models that you can look at that I think work for both. You know, obviously because of how hosting works, if you have the time to devote to it, obviously put them on both. But you can see how much of a following Merriweather, Flork, and a couple others do really well on social media. Matt C was even talking about, even without doing webcomics, Matt C has talked about, I don't think he'd mind me sharing it, I think he's been pretty open with this, but the fact that he generates a lot of his sales directly from Twitter, even more so than YouTube. So for certain people who
He used to do a webcomic. Kyrie started as a webcomic.
Oh, okay.
And I actually met Matt.
Then where's Matt C then?
Because I didn't talk to anybody because I was busy with life and I was really bad about coordinating with everybody except you guys.
All right.
and I'm a horrible person, but it's the facts.
That's fair.
But yeah.
Back to the.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But to answer, to Abigail's question, I think it depends on where your strengths are. And obviously, again, put them on both. But I think some people are really able to work the social media space really well. And if you're able to do that, I think posting your comics on social media can generate a lot of momentum. Like I said, Merriweather, I think, generates a lot of momentum on Twitter that I have seen. So, and there's a few others that I can think of. It also maybe a subtle or minor advantage. But it's one of those minor advantages that I think makes a big difference, which is the fact that if you have a webcomic that fits a particular niche, the social media community can help you find other creators. Because like I mentioned earlier, how one of my favorite communities is the edgy, underground, easily bannable comics on Twitter. And there's a whole cadre of them, and they all kind of know each other. And so you follow, and what's kind of neat is when you follow about...
Most of them are about a stone's toss apart.
Yeah. So you follow about half a dozen of them. Yeah. You follow a half dozen of them, and then when one of them gets banned, you can click and go, oh, okay, the guy, one of the other ones in the coterie has followed this other guy I haven't heard of, and it looks oddly familiar. Oh, it's his alt. And so sometimes that's how you find them when they do get banned, but allowing those connections to foster, and you get these little micro communities, and they're really fun to observe in some cases. And I think that's the type of thing that Twitter and other social media sites can really foster in a way that I don't think Webtoon and Tapas would foster as much. It's not that you couldn't make connections on those sites, but social media makes it really easy for those people to just find each other, for people who like one of those strips to then find a half dozen others that are all within that niche. And so there are benefits to the social media side of it. Abigail says that's true for YouTube channels too. Yep. Good. Same point there. Yeah.
So I think there's a good middle ground too, talking about like used to having your own website. Like obviously I have my own website. We all here have our own like main website for our comics and stuff like that. But one of the key factors of being on stuff like Tapas and Webtoons and any of these other hosting places is that you're searchable on that site itself, not only just like whatever integrations they have, APIs for you to share immediately. The middle ground is that you can be on a big network that does hosting, but also sets it up like you have your own site. And one of the places I mirror is Comic Fury, where I have a different site for each of the comics. And by just sheer viewing, aside from my main site, is probably the place that gets viewed the most. I think Realms and Relics, which is one of my later stories, is already almost breaking 10,000 views on that. And that's not even the primary site. I don't ever advertise Comic Fury. That's just from the internal indexing and people going to look at it. and then I think like my other stuff have been viewed more times than that. So I think Comic Fury is a really good middle option for people that still want to have something akin to their own website without all the work.
I don't even know what that is.
Solid advice.
Yeah, it's a webcomic hosting site that's built on HostGator.
Huh.
Alrighty, chat, hit us up with any other questions you've got.
Or any questions for that matter.
Or any questions.
Or any questions. There you go.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
All right, I'll start till people get going. What is your favorite webcomic at this point?
I thought we already answered this question.
I was gonna say, we already answered this question.
But we talked about like, I think we were talking about like overall. Do you mean the one that's updating right now?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Webcomic?
Currently running.
One of my longtime favorite ones is still running, and that's Sequential Art by Philip Jackson.
Oh yeah, I haven't been there
yeah.
in ages though.
Yeah, but it's still updating. I checked
Yeah,
recently. I went back like a chapter just to try to like see what's been going on, and I'll check in on it periodically.
I don't
And
think I'm
it's still
familiar
running
with that
strong.
Cross Comics says, "Hey, good to see you."
Cool.
And Neostar asks, "Any speedsters in your superhero school comics?" Yes.
Okay, here we go. Hold on. Keep having to bring stuff up.
The answer to that question is yes. I wanted there to be a. We wanted there to be a speedster. Actually, I think I had a name for a character, and I don't even know that we were going to make him the speedster. I originally, I think he was just going to be a guy who drove a car. I just loved the name Wheels McGee. And then
That is a great name.
Yeah. Cartoonicus just took the name and then was like, he made this entirely unique spin on the speedster character.
No. You came up with his actual powers.
Did I?
Okay. I just created a visual for him.
I think Blank McGee is almost always a great name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We've got a Bomber McGee.
Look at you trying to blame me for this.
Most things are your fault.
I also mirror on DeviantArt. I have one dedicated just for it. It's actually a great gallery system over there. I wish the actual like community of DeviantArt didn't go completely south, but it's got one of the best gallery systems out of any art hosting site.
You didn't like how it deviated?
Yeah.
Abigail says, "What is the webcomic that most devastated you when it stopped updating?" I have an answer to this one, but go ahead. Panel. Which one broke your heart when you were like, "Oh, it's over," or "It's done"?
Homeland.
Okay.
Yeah, Josh didn't finish twice, and the original storyline he didn't finish, and he came back after a few years hiatus and totally changed the setting, but kept the characters and developed. He finished the first storyline with those characters in the new setting, and then didn't start a second storyline and didn't finish it. But yeah, and then years later had a second comic called No Scrying, and that vanished off the internet before it was finished. And it was, I love Josh's comics. I just wish he'd finish them.
For me, it was it's one of the social media comics, so I don't know if it counts as a webcomic technically. But it was RGC, really good comics. When he disappeared from the internet, I felt a hole in my heart. It was edgy, surreal humor. It was the type of thing. It was kind of like Xavier Renegade Angel. It's the type of thing that like actually really smart people thought was found to be funny, although it looked like it was for stupid people, and that hits like just the right sweet spot for me. They were just genius. And when he got banned off of Twitter, he disappeared for several years, actually. And he's come back recently, and I don't know if he's hit his previous heights of genius, but that one still stings when I think about losing those utterly absurd MS Paint style comics. That
Why, when you can make them yourself?
No, like I said, he elevated the form. I'm going to save RGC for a stream where we're going to cover those types of comics, but you gotta see him to believe him. They really are something.
For me, I am gonna have trouble remembering the name of this comic. I want to say Avalon High. I don't think that's right. I think it's like Avion or something similar sounding. And this was the first webcomic that I remember showing how someone could take a 4-panel strip and not only combine comedy with drama, but really hit the emotional notes when they wanted to. And they got to what he was already telling us was the final chapter. This was going to be it. This is the big ending. And we got to this part where over the course of 2 single strips, it was already setting up this major twist in character development for some characters. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. You know, that moment just before when you're watching a show and they pull this kind of thing on you just before the season finale and they make you wait 6 months to find out what's going to happen next. You're like, no! And the very next thing he posts is, life's gone crazy. I'm dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to have to put a pause on the comic for a bit. And of course you're like, no. Well, I swear no less than like a month later, I think, the final post on that website was just a very quick and awkward explanation in writing about what would have happened if he had continued the comic, but I'm not going to. So here's the end of the story real quick for you.
It's called Avalon. It's not Avalon High. It's just called Avalon.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I was saying, like, I remember a movie called Avalon High.
Right,
It had to be
it
something
was just
different.
so abrupt, and you're like, no, don't do this to me. And you know how people hated, what was it, Game of Thrones season 8?
Mhm.
It too was just abrupt and awkward, and you're like, really? That's the end? Why? What are you doing to me?
Yeah. Also on the short list of things that like just stopped updating when that happened with the Green Avenger, which of course I'm the only one who's read. That was similar, but it was one of those things where I had not gotten back to it for a while, and I started reading back through the archives and then got busy with life again, and then it stopped being there. And I found through stuff that Abby didn't finish it, but then it wasn't there anymore. It just entirely had just vanished. And because of the way that she had the website built, the pages the images wouldn't archive with archives with the Wayback Machine. So you can go to a bunch of the pages, but they're just broken images.
Here's something I do want to bring up. It's something that kind of Abigail has touched on here in both of her questions. So I think it kind of it does touch on both of those her most recent questions. One thing I'm getting very tired of is, and it's also one of the reasons why I am a little bit. It has created 2 responses in me. But the response this phenomenon has created, it has made me a little bit less, it's made me more hesitant to invest myself in certain webcomics. And this phenomenon has also led to my utter commitment in Super Schooled to never derail from our mission, to be a humor strip with a loose plot. And to only allow for occasional moments of something else, but it's something that has been described in many criticisms of the form, which is the webcomic starts off being about humor or something, or it starts off being an adventure, or it starts off with one particular goal, but then as the as artists do, because artists are all crazy. Sorry, Cartoonicus. But
No, it's true.
Authors-
Artists
authors
are
are
all-
all-
what you're going to talk about here.
Writers
But-
are never prone.
yeah,
to
I know.
mental
Yeah.
illness.
We're not prone to mental
We're not-
illness
We're not driven by sadness or anger
committing
or
or
alcohol.
suicidal ideation. No writer has ever committed suicide. But no, the point I'm trying to make is that in webcomics, something we notice is this trend of the comic utterly derailing. In some cases, the derailing means that the comic starts off being funny and then just becomes nothing but drama. I think, was it Dumbing of Age might have been one of those. And it's like a start off just being 4-panel gag. And by the end of it, it's just drama. And often that drama can just become political drama. Sinfest has gone through a ridiculous arc in this regard. Starting off funny, then becoming political, then becoming the opposite political. It's that one's fascinating.
Is that what happened? Because I saw some picture online recently. I was like, wait a minute.
That's
They did
Sinfest? Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's like, he completely turned tail on some of the those. It's really weird. Anyway, so to bring this to bring it home though, there's a comic that and this is not the only time this has happened. You start reading a comic. One of the ones that was really egregious was a Supernormal Step, which sounded. I think it's something that Metal would really like.
Yeah. Oh, I'll bring it up. I got it here for you.
But,
I'm not familiar with this one.
It started off being about this kind of like isekai, this girl who's in another world, and it's got this kind of like charming art, but the storyline's pretty dark and serious, and it's got like magic and
now
technology and everything. But the story ends up derailing when the creator decided to have essentially a sectional devolution. And as many artistic Tumblr types are wont to do now, and come out as I think some sort of androgynous asexual or something. And so the comic started off with just this kind of like, hot girl comic. And by the end of it, it's just this utter neutering of not just the character, but like everything in the story. And it's just, I'm sick and tired of watching artists have these mental breakdowns. And then
hot girl comics.
Yeah. Well, but just watching an artist have a mental breakdown and then it just derails the comic. And it's not a rare occurrence. This is like, it's actually like a doc. At this point, I feel like it's a documented phenomenon. It's almost rare to see a comic stick with its vision from beginning to end and not derail and become insane.
I gotta admit, now I hadn't read it in a while, but I just got on here and I'm looking at what appears to be the final page.
Yeah, it's over.
It actually came to a conclusion.
It did end, but I don't think the ending was particularly satisfying. And like I said, I completely lost interest after the creator decided to take his gender dysmorphia and essentially just like, write that into the book. And so, like I said, what started off as being a kind of cool, like hot girl isekai kind of a thing just became this like, these were the good old days.
No, I mean that looks kind of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Well, that first chapter, what I came to believe, I don't think anything ever. Either they changed their minds after this, or I was just wrong reading too much into it. But the way they set things up, where anyone in this world can have access to magic, but that magic basically transforms itself into the way that you and your person chooses. It felt like what they were creating was the world of an MMORPG where you create your character and then go out and it's like your identity is, hi, I'm a superhero. Because that's how they were playing it. So it's like, even though she's using magic, magic transforms itself as superpowers, basically. And everybody had their own powers, and everybody, was creating different characterizations for themselves. And then everybody managed to attack the same giant monster all at once. It was like, what is this? This is a world boss battle is what's going on here. So that drew me in for like the first chapter or two. Then, they very quickly kind of, either I was seeing something that wasn't there, or they just decided to completely go in a different direction.
Well, I don't want to derail the conversation too much into this particular comic. I just want to say that like this was just one of the ones I thought of when it was like, hey, it started off being really cool, and then the comic just became just insanity. And webcomics matching, yeah, that's what happened to the hot girl. She became like, I can't even describe what this became.
Well,
the artwork became way more realistic than it had been.
By the way, that's the final boss. That's the end of the final boss right there. They just punch him, he's done. And there's like
It's also weird that I'm realizing they're ending this in the real world. They never went back.
The creator, I think, burned out a bit on the project. I think you can see the apathy.
I was going to say that it feels almost like he decided, okay, this is where we're going to have to end it.
But like I said, the creator has also gone through all of these very, very bizarre identity crisis moments, and that directly translated to the work. And it just makes you, I don't know, just makes you wish for the days when the worst thing that happened in comics was Steve Ditko got really cranky and said, I've had enough of this. My objectivist viewpoint won't allow me to do these anymore. I'm walking out.
And it's really weird. It's really weird where like people will go through stuff in life, and maybe this is like I was going back to the repository of dangerous things, which is still out there, and you should go check it out. It's really fun. But when you go, when people go on in life and life changes them or whatever else, they reflect back on the stuff that they did, and they decide that there's no value in it. And it's so weird to me because I think that life does have, I mean, your work does have value, even if it purports a perspective or a view of the world that you don't necessarily continue to have. That doesn't necessarily mean there was worthlessness in that, right?
I mean, you probably wouldn't have your current view if you didn't have that one back then. So.
Right? Exactly. And if you believe your current view is correct, then the path you got to take it isn't a bad one to go down. But and that's one of the things that is, it's frustrating. Ooh, awesome. Okay. Abiel says Carl's redrawing Barrel Shell, and it will be on Gumroad and Susha's comic site when he posts.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Because I would love an excuse to get that.
I interviewed him back when I was doing Newgrounds centric interviews. So I was only interviewing people who had Newgrounds accounts, and we talked about Barrel Shell and stuff. And then when I finally got around to reading it, I'm like, is he not continuing it or?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to dig in yet. But I absolutely, and he's been on. He was a semi-regular on the show for a while. But I guess he's only on Newgrounds right now. Abigail was saying, which that's fine. Twitter is a cesspool. That was where we mostly interacted before, so I understand leaving Twitter behind. But
Reese,
but
what you were
also,
saying there.
But anyway, yeah, sorry, I tried to
I
distract
promise
myself.
I promise you, Twitless, my comic was never on rails in the first place.
No, I'm fine with, okay, so like with Super Schooled, we embrace some of the chaos, but like there's a certain, like, at least in tone, like there's a consistency there. We're not doing like Super School will now be about this particular political diatribe.
And
garbage
we've always
like that.
maintained a grasp of the main characters, as opposed to so many comics I've seen who will go off on like a B plot and never come back. And like you'll just be seeing all this completely irrelevant stuff happening. You're like, what happened to the comic I was reading? I feel like this is a different comic now.
Well, and that's there was a lot of drift with forces. As we moved along, the characters got more complex and developed motivations that we didn't quite intend for them or whatever else. And with Chris and I, our banter was always so funny that I just knew that was going to carry the humor. But when he stepped back, and stuff, I mean, we had already kind of mapped out where we wanted the story to go, and so I'm kind of just following our notes. But we have different sensibilities, and so that's one thing that like I want to make sure it's still keeping the humor, but it definitely doesn't have the same kind of punch. Especially because like with the last the big 3 stories that are all Chad Summer adventure stories, they're all very plot driven. There's just tons of stuff that's happening that's moving things forward. But so I know that there's been drift with forces, but I hope it's fun for everybody. And we are still, I mean, we haven't left those main characters behind. They're just, growing up, and that's part of the story too, is that it's them growing up.
It's something, I mean, I will say this, it's something that I think as a webcomic creator, especially because you don't have the editorial oversight. And I think this impacts different creators in different ways, but I think it is an important factor to keep in mind. What is your original vision? And I think that if you drift too far away from it, it can cause problems. And I see it more often in certain types of artistic creators. But let's see here. Someone mentioned Ditko. Neostar says, I've been actually meaning to do a deep dive on Ditko and objectivism. It's interesting. He was an interesting fellow. I have some sympathies with the guy. I also think he was probably a hell of a guy to work with in terms of difficulty. And more than one person, I believe, expressed that he was difficult to work with. So I think that is as much of a maybe genius as he was in some ways. I think he was also it was good when he struck out on his own. Because
I don't know. I think you need at least one guy who's difficult to work with. Not more than one. There needs to be at least that one guy there that's difficult to work with. Kind of keeps everything else in balance.
Well, the problem with Steve was that he was so difficult to work with. It wasn't just difficult. He was so difficult that people would not talk because they were afraid that. Apparently, Steve would go home. He would listen to what people would say. He would go home. He would brood about it, and then so people were afraid to talk to him because they didn't know what thing he was going to take and then filter it through his objectivist philosophy and then get really bothered by. And
sounds more like it was difficult for him to live with himself.
It sounded like it's weird because some people met him later. Neil Gaiman went and met him in person, and he said it was magical. But that might have been just because it was in his studio on his terms. But it sounds like at the Marvel Studios, as he became more and more obsessed with objectivism, he became more and more difficult to work with, to the point where people were just afraid to talk to him.
Yeah.
Well, now, this is what's interesting about webcomics, for better or for worse, is because if Steve Ditko just decides to get up and leave in the middle of writing Green Lantern, you get another writer, right? Fire your artist, get another artist. These major IPs being created by major companies create something that is more of an IP than it is a work of art. And because of that, they've lasted the last 100 years with no end in sight, right? And dozens and dozens and dozens of artists and writers have come and gone. Everybody would love to be the person. I can't wait for my chance to write Batman, right? Whereas, for the most part, webcomics, because of their nature, are really the brainchild and baby of one or two people, and they're pretty much synonymous with that person who's created them. And when that person ends up either changing something about themselves or just deciding they don't want to do it anymore, that's the end of the road for the comic, because there's nobody else to swoop in and be like, well, fine, I'll just keep it going on for you. That comic belongs to and exists in the mind purely of that creator.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that's I don't know, in some ways webcomics are a natural extension of the 80s black and white indie community in that way, where there's that small team of husband and wife or two friends or dude and his drinking buddies.
Well, and of course, that's the thing about really any indie project, video games, films, it's going to be your personal project as opposed to when a big company has 300 people working on a movie together so they can just pump it out and make $1 billion.
Fizz just brought up the point of that pisses me off, which is I know Denny O'Neil deserves some credit for some positive things, but there's some things he did, decisions and things he wrote that I think are trash, and his take on Question is one of them. So
Yeah, and I really want to have a good conversation about that, because I loved the Question, but I've only read a few guest appearances and Denny's version, and I love the vibe that he puts in the city and all that kind of stuff. So I really want to go back and read more Ditko Question, but I haven't had a chance yet. So I graduate in the spring though, so who knows what the summer has.
I just read a little bit and I was like, oh, this is so far off of what the intention was, and it's the character is meant to be kind of the objectivist character, and it's just like, no, I'm going to make him a feminist, and it's like, screw off.
Right.
Like,
of course, that's the downside.
I'm sorry.
That's like, the downside to so many big name comics too, is that any new writer can come in and they don't necessarily have a clue what they're doing.
Right. Well, and
Denny O'Neil's Green Lantern, Green Arrow is overrated. It is hacky as hell.
Yes, it is. Well, that's why it didn't sell. It's well remembered by people that didn't buy it. So that's funny. But that actually comes up with one of the things that Fizz actually mentions. This little comment here: I have a problem with shoving mean-spirited parodies of franchises I hate into comics, so the protagonists can fight them. And I think that's a really valid aspect, because it actually ties into that whole concept of how the Question was done in that, under that framing of it. And like I said, I want to read more to have a really thorough take on that. But it's a play. It is the straw manning of the enemy is a common trope in not just webcomics, but in all kinds of fiction. And I mean, it sort of makes sense, because I mean, propaganda is just one side of a story. Excuse me. So, you're always telling somebody's story.
So here's the thing: there are plenty of, like I said, there's basically an indie version of everything, right? Games, films, TV, you name it. There are plenty of indie print comics out there to match the big name.
Yeah, let's talk about one of those.
Well, hold on. Why is it there are no big name webcomics?
That's not.
Why is it that webcomics appear to always be indie? And thus, like I said,
first of all,
their creators.
The Webtoon originals are basically big line webcomics. I mean, they hire people, they pay them.
Okay, I was going to get to that in a minute. Yeah, I think that's.
Well, there's also Metabang has their own manga series that are all digital, and that's basically big name webcomics.
Yep.
Ah, okay.
It's just not coming from America. So yeah. And that and DC made a webcomic, but DC contracted that out to Webtoon make, I think. I don't know that they're doing the direction on that, but
I think part of it too is the Japanese and Korean comic industry already functions a lot closer to how we make webcomics. Like they have publishers and stuff for their magazines, but their magazine is almost like if you went to a webcomic site, right? And you found a bunch of things to read. It's just curated, and everything usually works on smaller teams where there's like one person who carries the vision. They own at least part of the property. It goes with them if they no longer continue to work at the magazine, and they might have some assistants that work underneath them, but it's a very, very small team stuff when it comes to manga. And I think the way that they already handled comics was easier for them to adapt into the digital and web format.
But when I said that indie comics are synonymous with their creators, not one person questioned me. Nobody thought to say, well, that's only the indie stuff, Taylor, right? It was so in our minds that webcomics are small-time, one or two people creating them.
Yeah, I think that's just the majority of how it's done.
And so I'm just wondering why.
I think there's actually like 6 people, maybe up to times 7 people who work on Tales Get Strolled. It started out very small, but they actually have a
Right.
pretty big team right
But
now.
even that is, I mean, 7 people, right?
Well, I think
That's bigger than most manga teams.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the reason is because that's just because it grew out of people just doing their stuff, right?
Yes, that
So,
makes
I mean,
sense.
since
Also,
it had its origins in an indie perspective, I think that's all part of that.
I'm also thinking the fact that you don't have to have a publisher to produce the work, and so many companies, there's so many industries grew out of us not having the technology for self-publishing yet, and so these
Mhm.
big companies uh, basically invented, in many ways, the artwork. Whether again it was just film, comics, so many things. Indie creators came along later once the technology got better. Whereas with webcomics, the internet was just there, and it suddenly opened up for anybody who couldn't get hired by a big name comic to just immediately produce their stuff on their own.
Yeah, I think that stuff's part of it, and also the distribution angle. Webcomics, the publishing and distribution is one thing, right?
Yeah, the
And-
budget is proportional to the number of people working on a webcomic.
Yeah.
So, so I think that spurred along the and it's
And I suppose the one other big example of that would be YouTubers.
yeah.
Where YouTubers started out, it's only now that the big companies are realizing, "Ooh, we got to jump in on this."
Well, now as in 2016.
Yeah, it's been a while now, but
Yeah,
it
but
did
they-
start off for almost a good decade of
Mhm.
mostly independence.
Yep.
And
Yep.
really, I mean, the indies made YouTube what it is. It's
Yeah,
only
oh,
in
yeah.
recent years that not only have the big companies been doing it, but that YouTube has basically turned their back on the indies who made them and said, "Hey, we want these big billionaire business people to be the ones who make us."
Yeah.
So-
Go where the dollars are. Can't even hate on that. And Abigail, yes, you should go out and draw. Absolutely.
Don't go out and draw. You're probably already in. Just sit there at a desk and draw. It's way better than going outside.
Yeah.
The
Look
wind
at
could
that.
get in the way, all kinds of issues. Could be
There you
raining.
go. That's the ticket
Well,
right there.
and trying to set your computer up outside in nature. I mean,
Where are you even going to plug it in?
exactly.
Well, some people just draw on paper. That's the thing that happens.
That's me. Yeah, I could just take a notebook out there. But again, wind, water, elements.
It is February, so
It was
As-
raining
as-
today.
it was raining today. So, also, I want to go back to something that I wanted to do earlier. Was Neo had asked if we had any speedsters in our comics, and I did want to go ahead and share. We do, not in our main school, but as you may or may not know, in Forces there are several hero schools, and this girl in the shorts with the top there and the big goggles, that is the speedstress, and she is from a hero school in Michigan, and this is her boyfriend, the Edge, and some other kids from her school. And during that story that this is all in is the Panic at the Ren Fair, and everybody gets big fancy. They not big, but they get like Ren Fair themed costumes for the competition that's there, and this is the costume we designed for her as a speedster that I really like, but is probably really silly, which is that one. So yeah, there you go.
I have a speedster right on my screen.
That's true. I'm sure. I can't tell which
That
is
one
which.
was drawn. That was the rabbit girl drawn by
Oh,
Rick
yeah, yeah.
Piper in that image. Yeah. Jack
Yeah.
Rabbit.
Yeah. So there you go.
Abigail asks, "Are you guys still doing the zine?" I believe so, but I believe it's also completely in Twitless's hands right now.
I'm waiting to hear back from Matt. Matt's a little behind on finishing Kyrie, so
That's Matt C, right?
Yep. I don't even know what that is. Neo says everybody do the Michigan rag. I don't even know what that is. Is that a dance?
Sounds like some old 30s.
It would probably be done in ragtime.
Yeah,
I'm
I would imagine.
assuming.
Yeah, sounds like. So Abigail asking my favorite question: have you ever guys seen the Disney Channel original movie Sky High? That's what I think of when I think of superhero school.
Where do you think all of us got the idea?
Of course. You know, back in 2003, that's where I got the idea from.
Not influenced at all by the Legion of Superheroes.
No, I still haven't read much Legion. The couple of scenes where they show up in Superman comics from the Golden Age. So, what are you sharing with us, Cartoonicus?
I looked it up. Apparently, that's the Michigan rag.
Oh, come on, my baby.
Oh, okay. I just never knew the name of that song.
Oh.
You know?
I did not know that had a. Okay, there you go.
The more you know.
He does say the word ragtime gal in there, so
Yeah.
it was done in ragtime.
Yeah. Heavy detail art pros and cons in webcomics?
Time.
Is that the question? Oh man.
Heavily detailed.
Scheduling and time. That's the big con. It's like how often do you want to get your comic out? But then again, there's people who make simple comics that don't get them out very regularly. So it just depends on you.
I mean, so it depends on. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I was talking about this when we were talking about the newspaper comics, trying to defend the simplistic flat art styles that they all have, pointing out that when you are doing a weekly webcomic and having it, I literally put out a strip a week. We used to do 2. When we got busy, I had to cut down to 1, right? These guys, some people will put out 7 strips every single week, 365 strips a day, for 30 years. And yeah, you bet they're going to have to find an art style that allows them to do that easily and quickly and without destroying the muscles in their hands. So comics can be detailed. I wouldn't necessarily say that they easily lend themselves to that kind of art.
Well, yeah,
No,
I mean,
I'll tell
if
you,
you
my
look
hand
at
was cramping up in that first panel of the 2 bonus pages for Realms and Relics I put up because I did like this detailed fortress, forest, mountain image that I was hashing away at. I was like, I could feel it. I could feel it.
Well, and that's like, I mean, like Joe England, who did I was talking about Zebra Girl, his stuff's very highly rendered, black and white. I don't know if he stayed with it. The original pages were actually done on on physical medium and then scanned in. But I mean, he did his stuff was very, very detailedly rendered.
Though I am going to point out that you said black and white.
It was black and white.
Right.
It was black and white. Yep.
He did that, but he didn't go even a further step of coloring the thing crazy.
Yeah. And I think there were I seem to remember there was some colors at different stages, but he did settle into the black and white groove. And that's just how it ran, and that makes a big difference too, how you choose to do that, something like that. But I can't. It can be done. It's just a matter of, and I think he got to the point when he was regularly updating the last chapters where he was just doing a page a month, just because there were so much.
Oh, and let me tell you, actually, my favorite webcomic, which unfortunately almost never. Where is it? Did I lose it? No, there you go. Lackadays. Almost never updates anymore because the pages come out so slowly. Started out as this and ended up becoming this.
Jeepers.
And yeah, I think it's been like 6 months since I first read this. Now, part of that is the fact that they are also creating an animated film at the same time they're all doing this, which is pretty impressive. So I'm sure a lot of effort is going into that. But still, long ago, I started watching those pages be updated, taking much longer and longer spurts in between updates because this stuff takes a lot of, and again, let's go back to it here. That I can't imagine how long one of these panels actually takes to illustrate.
A bit.
Oh, and there's a problem with that too. It's not just the time, right? So it looks beautiful. So that there's a pro. You can make a beautiful looking comic that would actually probably do better if it was just sold as a full digital comic or as a print comic. But these type of comics too, in a quick window for sharing, like just a thumbnail or whatever or you even post it on social media, are often the ones that get buried, right? Because an individual part of it may not be that eye-catching compared to something that's got flat colors where somebody can tell what it is at a glance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big con of having overly detailed work, is some of the stuff that catches random people's attention is stuff that is thick-lined, flat colored, and people can tell it's at while they're scrolling by.
This is a great comment. I got to interrupt you guys to point out this comment that Abigail made. I would actually die making this.
What? Oh.
Because it's so detailed.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Did we cover Abigail's question? Have we ever seen Sky High? Did we ever heard of that?
Yeah. I believe we talked about that.
Have we ever addressed that ever?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think this was the first time.
I think it's the first time we've ever addressed that question.
Never even heard of that movie. I don't know what you're talking about. What's an underrated webcomic you can read right now?
To be honest,
Just don't sit around. I'll have you know, my comic is appropriately rated.
That's funny.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
So,
I'm going to say this comic itself, even though it has quite a following and enough to have them have gotten funded to make this film, probably not nearly as much as it should, especially for the quality of stuff they're able to put out. So go check out Lackadaisy and their film and maybe fund them.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I'm digging right now are stuff you've already heard on the show, probably. I don't think my superhero power sucks, but I do make the best of it. That Mrs. H's superhero school comic gets enough attention. It's great. Also, Between Worlds is also great. So those are a couple that I would recommend on the short list of stuff being done today. So, it's other everybody's here's book is good too.
I'd be very curious to hear Twitless's answer here.
Martian Magazine.
Martian Magazine. Here we go.
Never
Googling it.
Okay.
Everybody immediately comes
Probably
to Google.
appropriately underrated if
if nobody's ever heard of it, I
answers.
suppose. Yeah.
Very good answer. Then.
I knew it would be something crazy. Oh, what is this? Is this a
Edgy comic that's mostly on social media
I was gonna
and
say,
has
is
gotten
this-
banned before?
I was going to say, is this a non sequitur comic?
No, it's not.
No?
They recently did he recently reposted one of his oh gosh, I can't even say. I'll post a link in chat, and you guys cannot show this on stream. But
Whoa, okay.
you will get a kick out of it because it's funny as hell.
Can we describe it?
It's a Scooby-Doo themed comic.
Whoa, he's gone, just like that.
He died. I've seen this. I didn't know the name of it, but I'm familiar with this comic style, and I've seen this exact one.
Oh gosh. You can just Google Martian Magazine, and And
I also recognize the Foxford Comics mascot.
yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I've seen this.
All right, I will link. I will
What
link.
the hell?
You laughed.
No, it's funny. It's very good
This
stuff.
is by the way, this is what we will be exploring when we do
Oh, no.
Twitless's cadre of
Well,
edgy.
no, it's
social
classically
media.
funny. That's, I mean, it fits the criteria of what makes something objectively
It's the type of
funny.
stuff I'm also usually into.
That
Well,
doesn't mean it's okay.
now hold on. I was just looking at the first few strips. Is that what the modern art looks like, or is this a one-time comic?
No, he does.
Listen, it's okay to be edgy. It's perfectly okay to be edgy.
Only if you're also accurate.
So
That's why I lost all respect for I forget his name right now.
So many people.
You lost
Right,
so
I
much
gotta-
respect for him. You forgot his name.
Yeah, exactly. He memory
So
hole.
the poor fan base is wondering what the heck we're talking about here because they can't see it.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
okay.
I posted a link in chat to the guy's website. You can
Oh.
see. Yeah. This is just a taste of the edgy, but definitely underrated. I have a whole list of these, and I keep finding new ones. It's great. It's wonderful. I'm probably on an FBI watch list just because of my webcomic, this webcomic list that I follow. Anyway, so I gotta head off, but we might want to.
after I've wrecked your night, I have to leave now.
Yeah.
Bye.
You can blame whoever asked for underrated webcomic.
Oh, that would be happy. So, well, I don't. Okay, hang on. He clicked the link. He says,
Okay.
I take no responsibility for whatever happens here.
"The Edge." Okay,
Ow, the edge.
Shadow the Edgehog.
Some of these are so darn funny too.
Well,
Foxford is utterly hilarious.
So you have anyone remember the one of the short comic with the rabbits in a social credit score world? No,
I do not.
I don't know what that is, but that
Isn't that just the world we're living in?
Yeah, except rabbits can't get social credit scores because they're not humans.
Oh, try telling that to the Chinese.
I just discovered one that did have some rabbits. It was a Doji Saga, which was kind of a schizo comic, I think, which has its own charm. Schizo comics are a treat, but
Neo
again,
Stars.
I'm saving these for later. Like I said, I have a whole list.
Okay, closing questions: pizza or hamburgers?
In
Burger.
comics?
Burger every time.
Burger, but perhaps he's asking in comics.
No, I think it's just general.
I think it's just in general.
Pizza
I
comics versus burger.
I would say that's a false dichotomy. You can eat lots of things, and I do.
You could put
Sometimes.
hamburger on your pizza.
I have
Hamburger pizza. That's a thing you can do.
My-
And you can even put pizza on your hamburger, a pizza burger. That's pretty good.
You make
my-
a burger with pizza as the buns.
my diet only lets me do typically
This is-
one of those, so it's burger every time. If I
Yes, this is why I'm fat. You can't see under the sweater, but trust me.
Yeah.
He says in comics.
In comics, I think that pizza is a better prop in a comic about teenagers. So I use pizzas a lot.
Teen Titans.
It's also more satisfying to draw because you can draw like the Ninja Turtles, how they do it and stuff.
Now,
But
I
out
will
of
say-
them, I think I've raw on burgers in comics, so I think they have to side with that out of just experience. I'll have to draw some pizza in a comic.
I only know one webcomic that's about either. It's called Tales of Pizza. And it's about what it's like being a pizza delivery guy.
That sounds amazing. So
It can be funny. It's a little
on-
freaky at times too.
All right, I got to bounce
Okay.
in a minute. So, do we have any concluding thoughts?
no, I don't think so, man. I think things are. I think things
Read
are wrapped up
webcomics
pretty.
before they
pretty
get
well.
deleted.
What now?
Read webcomics before they get deleted.
Read
Especially
webcomics.
if they are super edgy.
Just drop everything you're doing and just binge nothing but webcomic
And
for the next
since you're talking about it, you should start with Forces of Good and Evil, because honestly, the first chapter of the manga edition is on Global Comics right now, so you can go check out from the beginning. We're putting up every couple of weeks, right? Putting up a chapter as we get through the organization of the manga edition. It's going to be going up there now. It's not getting up there with all the background and supplemental information, behind the scenes stuff. That's getting saved for those lucky of you who decide to purchase the physical copy once it's ready to go. But if you've never read Forces, if you want to start at the beginning, if you want to see what this is all about, go check us out on Global Comics. So Ideal Comics got a whole bunch of free stuff there. We've got stuff from all across our history. Go check it out. It's going to be exciting, I tell you, because we're making books. And the other guys, they make comics too. X Dynamos Chaos, you can go check that one out. It's 5th anniversary. And Super Schooled, you got the link up there. So until next week.
Don't forget the most important one, Sonic Blast on DeviantArt.
There you go.
By
Yeah, right there.
Cartoonicus.
It's the most important Sonic fan comic in the history of Sonic fan comics.
Oh gosh, it makes me cringe.
Yeah.
I
So,
wrote that script on notepad paper
that's amazing.
and handed it to Cartoonicus.
Just just walked across the hallway, handed to him.
That's exactly. I had a binder. I wrote it down literally on notebook paper, and I would hand it to him. That's
I
how.
colored it in a program called Adobe Photo Deluxe. If anybody has even heard of that before I even knew what Photoshop was.
No, I have never heard of Photo Deluxe. So it sounds amazing. So okay, that's the show. Next week, we don't have a show for next week, but we will. Actually, I don't know. Next week's St. David's Day, and I kind of want to maybe take a day off, just hang out with the fam. So,
Alrighty.
but we'll let everybody know. We'll decide here and talk about it, and we might take a week off. We might not. I don't know. But for now, we've given you tons of comics, hundreds, maybe thousands of pages. Go back and read some, guys.
And keep reading them.
Last note. Oh, not that one. This one here. Use GIMP like a real man. So later, everybody. That's the nose. That's the closes it. Bye.
Yeah, see.